everyone. So every week inside of the Alcohol Freedom Program, I do a deep dive on Fridays where I share video or content or resources with regards to the Sinclair Method. So this is one that I shared this week, and I wanted to just put it out here on YouTube as well. If you guys are looking for more support on your Sinclair Method journey, where you can have access to daily support from coaches and peers and video courses and group support and really everything you'll need to succeed on TSM, I really invite you to check out the Alcohol Freedom Program. It is linked below. We would love to be a part of your Sinclair Method journey. Hey everybody, I hope you all are doing really well and having an awesome week. In today's deep dive, I wanted to cover a really common question that comes up from people who are on the Sinclair Method, and that is, how do I know when I'm at extinction? And there are really three main points that I wanted to cover to answer this question today. The first one is that extinction is a subjective experience. The second thing I want to talk about is that extinction is not necessarily an overnight event for a lot of people. And the third thing I want to talk about is that, of course, extinction does not equal abstinence. So the first thing I wanted to address with regards to extinction is that it's a subjective experience. So it's really up to you to decide if and when you are at extinction. And so just some things for you to look out for to know whether or not you are at extinction or if you're approaching it are things like, you really have an off switch consistently when you drink. Maybe you're still drinking regularly, maybe that's weekly or a couple days a week or however often you're drinking. But when you do drink, you really feel like you have an off switch, and it comes, without a lot of effort. Of course, we can still overdrink even past extinction if we're not being mindful and if we're drinking too quickly and things like that. But for most people, once they've reached extinction, they really can have an off switch and especially be more, mindful around it, where sure, they can habitually keep drinking, especially if people are handing them drinks and they're being offered drinks, but they have this internal space within them to really pause and examine, do I want another drink, or would water be better? So for people who are at extinction, the off switch really comes more naturally with when they are drinking. Obviously, when people are at extinction, they're usually drinking far less often. So usually they have way more alcohol-free days than they do have drinking days. Another thing to look out for is that, of course, the cravings for alcohol once you're at extinction are pretty much gone. And there's an important distinction between having a craving for alcohol versus just having thoughts about drinking. I haven't drank in 3.5 years through the Sinclair Method, but sometimes I still think about drinking if I'm in certain environments or places or around people that are very familiar to me and used to be a part of my drinking lifestyle. So I'll still get thoughts about drinking. Like if I go to Sonoma and I'm at a winery or something, I'll just kind of like romanticize what that was like for me back when I was drinking. But typically, if I play the whole memory out, it's going to end with me being really intoxicated, usually blacked out and really hungover the next day. So, and of course, even though I don't drink anymore, I always still have the option to drink if I want to. I just truly haven't had a strong enough urge to drink. So that's definitely how you know you're at extinction as well, is you really don't have any cravings for alcohol. And if you do have them, they're very mild and usually something you can play out, and it goes away within a matter of, 5 minutes, 15 minutes or something like that. Whereas before, obviously we could have a craving and it would be an incessant thought that really wouldn't leave us. And so that's another thing to look out for, is that, you're really not thinking about alcohol much, or you're craving it a lot less often. Another way to know that you're at extinction is that alcohol just really takes up a much smaller part of your life. I know when we struggle with alcohol, oftentimes our life can really revolve around it, where we're planning everything around whether or not we're going to be able to drink or if there's going to be drinking there. I certainly knew that was true for me. Alcohol was a part of my daily life. So as I got toward extinction and ultimately reached extinction, alcohol really became just this insignificant part of my life. I still drank for about 4 months or so after I reached extinction. So it was still a part of my life, but it was so insignificant that most days I was not thinking about it. I wasn't using it anymore as a coping tool. I wasn't drinking out of habit. If I was drinking, it was from a really conscious decision of, okay, I think I'll have a glass of wine with dinner tonight. And so that's a little bit of like the subjective experiences that people have when they're nearing extinction, or when they reach extinction. So they have easier alcohol-free days. They're usually having more alcohol-free days than they are drinking days. When they are drinking, their off switch is more prominent, or it's easier for them to just be more mindful and really think, do I want another drink? And then, alcohol is just taking up a much smaller part of your life, and it really becomes an accessory as opposed to the main event. So the second thing I wanted to talk about is that extinction is not an overnight event for most people. Extinction is usually something that's discovered and realized over time. I think for me, it took me about a month of really kind of paying attention and being curious of whether or not I had reached extinction, because when we're at extinction, our brain is basically restored to the state it was before we had alcohol use disorder. So it's really important that we play out different scenarios and patterns and triggers in our life to see how we are responding to them. Sometimes people get going on the Sinclair Method and they have amazingly quick results. Maybe they're hardly drinking at all and just have a really prominent off switch, so they stop after 1 or 2 drinks. But that doesn't mean they're at extinction, obviously, because they're just starting out on the method. And oftentimes when people have that experience early on, their drinking can kind of go up and down for a while after that. So extinction is typically something that's realized over a long term through the Sinclair Method. And you really notice it on a daily basis of whether or not, how much am I thinking about alcohol? Am I relying on alcohol as a coping tool? Am I still drinking out of habit? How much am I craving alcohol? How many alcohol-free days am I having? So I would say, like, for people, if they're questioning whether or not they're at extinction, to give it time and just see how you are responding to alcohol in different circumstances and situations that you are in. And really, like, have you really changed your relationship with alcohol as well? I talk a lot about that because I think the Sinclair Method is really all about changing our relationship with alcohol at the core. So that means, yes, alcohol may still be a part of our life when we use it to celebrate and something we enjoy, but it's no longer something that we are looking to as a coping tool or a numbing agent. So ultimately, when we've reached extinction, we've really changed our relationship with alcohol, and we can recognize that in ourselves, over a period of time. For a lot of people, extinction, it really varies for how long it takes people to get there. I've seen some people reach it in as little as 3 months, and I've seen others it take, a year or 2 or more. Sometimes what I find with people is they don't think that they're at extinction yet, even if they've been on the method for a year or more. But really what I find is that they may be closer to extinction than they think, meaning their brain may be rewired as far as it goes with, the cycles of alcohol use disorder and the hijacking that happens in our brain when we have alcohol use disorder. But what happens in those instances is often those people are drinking out of habit and drinking daily or really regularly. And so they're not giving their brain a chance to experience pleasure and endorphins from things outside of drinking. And so, in those situations, what I've seen work well for people is if they're able to get more regular alcohol-free days, even if it's just starting with 1 alcohol-free day a week, it can help them to recognize and realize that they're at extinction or closer to it than they think. I remember a client very clearly. She'd been on the method for about 18 months and was feeling really discouraged. She was drinking almost a bottle of wine every single night. Her drinking had reduced enough so she was like, pleased with where she was at, that she'd cut back quite a bit, but she was still drinking a lot more than she wanted, but she was terrified of having alcohol-free days. And so we worked to gradually reduce her drinking on just 1 day a week so that, instead of drinking her usual almost full bottle that week, we were gradually cutting back. And eventually that became her first alcohol-free day. And then she got a second alcohol-free day after a little while, and a third. And then when she was drinking, she was still drinking far less often. She was having more mindfulness when she was drinking. And so really incorporating in more alcohol-free days can help people if they've been on the method for a long time and feel like, they're nowhere near extinction, or they're wondering if they are. It's really important to have those alcohol-free days alongside of course, the drinking on the Naltrexone and the extinction sessions. So that's the other part of it. I will say that some people, may realize extinction in what feels like overnight. You hear those stories of people who maybe they're on, the Sinclair Method for many months or a year, and they really feel like they're not seeing any progress, then all of a sudden they just turn a corner and things really start to change, and they lose interest in drinking in what feels like overnight. So that can certainly happen. The longer we're drinking on the medication Naltrexone, the better it's going to work for us. So everyone's so individualized in how quickly they'll reach extinction. Like I said, I've seen it from anywhere to 3 months up to 2 years or more. And again, just because someone's been on it for that long and they don't feel like they've reached extinction or they're not near it, that's where adding in those alcohol-free days and really cultivating a life that revolves less around alcohol is really what's going to bring people to extinction ultimately. And of course, as I always like to say, there's no race to extinction because, as cliche as it sounds, the Sinclair Method is really about the journey and not the destination, because as you go through this method and you see yourself transform with regards to your relationship with alcohol and you see yourself become someone who's empowered over alcohol, that journey can take time, and we don't want to rush it, because if we're trying to rush it and just get to the end goal of extinction or what our personal goals are, it's like we miss the journey along the way, and that may cause someone to return to drinking without Naltrexone because they haven't really given themselves a chance to build sustainable habits. I've seen it where people have a traumatizing life circumstance come up and, they thought they were at extinction, and certainly, they probably were at extinction, but they hadn't really been equipped to develop coping tools along the way. And so they returned to drinking again without Naltrexone. And so, it's really about, I think, building sustainable change and sustainable results. And so I know human nature, it's really easy for us to compare our progress to somebody else's progress, but it's so important that we take as long as we need with this journey. And that's honestly why in the program here, we've given our members lifetime access, because some people cycle in and out of TSM. It takes them a few attempts before they're ready to commit. Some people it takes 6 months, some people it takes a couple of years. And so really to honor your own personal journey with that and try not to compare it to somebody else's, and make the sustainable change in your life and in your habits and in your relationship with alcohol that will really last. And that's also why we, focus on micro goals, so that you can have little bite-sized things to focus on each week, as opposed to feeling like you have this whole mountain to climb. And then the final thing, of course, which is a common thing that people confuse with extinction, is that extinction does not equal abstinence. Certainly people can reach extinction and quit drinking just because they genuinely lose interest in alcohol. That is what happened to me, and I certainly did not have that intention. But after a year on the method, I just was so uninterested in drinking, and really it wasn't adding anything into my life anymore, that I just gradually kind of accidentally quit drinking. So certainly extinction can equal abstinence for people, but I think for a lot of us, we reach extinction and we have that more balanced and moderate relationship with alcohol, where we are really in the driver's seat in our relationship with alcohol. We're deciding when we drink. If we want to have a couple of beers out with friends, or wine with dinner, or champagne at a wedding, it's like we have that option with the Sinclair Method. And so once people do reach extinction, again, it's that subjective experience of you really feeling like you're back in control of your relationship with alcohol. People really do have the option to drink in moderation whenever they want, and feel like they have a sense of control over that, or they quit drinking altogether. So both are totally reasonable and achievable goals on the Sinclair Method. So I hope this video was helpful. So just to recap, kind of the 3 things to keep in mind as you're thinking about whether or not you're at extinction or you're looking forward to extinction, is that number 1, it's really a subjective experience. It's you deciding if you feel like you have total control over your drinking. You have control when you are drinking, you're having more alcohol-free days, you feel like alcohol is taking up a smaller and smaller part of your life, and you've really changed your relationship with alcohol and gotten your power back over alcohol. The second thing is that for most people, extinction is not an overnight event. It's, something that is typically realized over a period of time, a few weeks or few months. So it's something that you can, again, really just be curious about your own journey and where you're at. And if you feel like you're back in control with regards to your relationship with alcohol. And the third thing is that extinction does not equal abstinence. People can reach extinction and still keep alcohol in their life with control and moderation. All right, I will talk to you guys again soon. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Bye for now.